seems only fitting that my last speaker I'm going to introduce in the Conservative Forum is also a member of the Conservative Forum. And some of you have probably seen good old Aaron at a tea party. You ever been at tea parties? Yeah. And Aaron has been one of the regulars for the last 3 years at the Chavez Pavilion, or wherever it is down there across from the Fairmont Hotel. And he's a good guy, and everything he does is really sharp. But he also joined our group for a couple weeks in our discussion group on Monday mornings. And believe it or not, the leader of the community center came upstairs and said, "You're too young to be involved in this group." So he was kicked out unceremoniously. So, and that's the truth. But he's a senior at San Jose State, majoring in engineering. He has an aptitude for science, math, philosophy, and history. But he also has a healthy skepticism about a lot of things. He's a former Eagle Scout, a self-described libertarian, firearms enthusiast, Lego maniac, and a part-time contrarian. He knows just a little bit about everything and a terrifying amount about nothing. Everything has been said, but not everyone has said it. That's the title of Aaron Neighbour's talk. Let's welcome Aaron Neighbour.
All right, I'm keeping it at this distance. This distance good? Audible to everyone? Good. I was told right when I got here that my presentation physically was not befitting of a speaker. I disagree. I have the rolled up sleeves, I have the collar button down shirt. The only thing I'm missing is my cylindrous spectacles. Now I'm fully prepared to give away $500 million of your money to prospective companies that may or may not stay in business throughout the end of the fiscal year. I was driving down 880 the other day, as I often do, and if you drive, you see Solyndra, and then you see Solyndra's industrial manufacturing plant, which they built with the money that we'll never see again. And don't you love that public money for private benefit? It's just, government picking winners and losers. And you're like, oh, well, at least that fiasco's over. We'll never see the money again. And then you drive, I counted out 43 seconds down the road, northbound, and you look at Tesla Motors' NUMMI plant, who just secured $465 million into the same loan program. They built a $100,000 electric vehicle, which hasn't been selling very well. And then they're saying, no, we're gonna build a car with 4 doors, not 2 doors, 4 doors, much bigger, and we're gonna sell it for $40,000. And the government's like, okay, we'll buy it. I'm not sure who I'm gonna get these off. All right. So I come from humble beginnings, and beginnings in an area where I didn't sort of fit in. I remember I was once in Berkeley's Revolutionary Books. When you go and validate your parking ticket to park at UC Berkeley, there's this bookstore right next to you that's a communist bookstore, legit communist bookstore. I walked in there once to read. I just finished a chapter on Mao Zedong. I was reading through it, and I wanted to see what all of those teenagers my age were so enthused about in 1966 with the little red book, going and beating up the professors in the street and so on and so forth. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'll go read the translated version. So I walk in there, communist bookstore, selling Mao Zedong's little book, the size of one of those New Testament things that people hand out for free, $13. Okay, I bite, I look at it, I'm opening up, a woman in there decided that was an invitation for her to come talk to me. I was the only other person in the store. And she walks up to me with her seeing eye dog, but she's not blind. Totally cognitive, everything's going on, completely visionful, with a capitalist free market item next to her. Oh no, where are the speakers? Good. So check this out. She walks up to me, what are you reading? Just looking at Mao Zedong. I just got in, you saw me walking, I haven't read anything. She's like, so what do you think about Mao? I'm like, okay. Well, he's the greatest body bag filler in human history, so what else do you want to know about him? He's like, that's not true. I said, oh, well, if you don't include famine victims, then maybe Stalin breaks ahead in the pack, but he's number 2 then. That's not true. I said, well, what do you mean it's not true? He didn't kill anyone. Didn't kill anyone. I mean, this is the level of insanity. When people compartmentalize their brains, they're totally functional. They go and eat, act like a normal human being, and then they say, no, I didn't kill anyone. And so you're like, okay, clearly brain matter is not talking to each other. And then I said, okay, well, let's just admit on a good famine, just a good famine, 2 million dead. Not the 65 million total, let's just do 2 million. She's like, no. Well, what about a good genocide, a good 20,000 farmers who didn't comply? She's like, no, he didn't kill anyone. I said, well, what about the Gang of Four? He paraded them out and said, I am going to kill you, and did, on television. That's all U.S. propaganda. No, it's his propaganda. This is a real, reasoning, cognitive, sentient being who votes and cancels you out. Another experience I had in a very similar nature was in one of my college classes recently. It was a religions class. Death, Dying, and Religions was the name. The professor was an econ major, Keynesian economist back in the day, and then decided to become a philosopher, and decided to teach us about hospice care, which is fine. But he was also a member of a different group, a group called Bioneers, which he's called biological engineers. It's not, it stands for pioneers with the P turned upside down. Didn't even understand his own organization. Bioneers is one of those Agenda 21 type groups. They think the world is coming to an end now, like it happened yesterday, and we missed it. We don't see the apocalyptic firestorms and tornadoes, but they're upon us right now. The sort of Nostradamus effect sort of people, where, in 20 years, they always predict after they're dead. He's 70 years old. In 20 years, I'm just warning you so we can never say, haha, you're wrong. He came back from a Bioneers convention and felt really guilty for having driven his car there. He drives an 80s Volvo. What else would you drive in his state? And guess who was giving the conference? Don't guess, I'll tell you. Van Jones. Bioneers is one of those crazy organizations. I looked it up, and it's supposed to be educating educators on the risks of things taught by scientists and wonderful speakers. They had a professor of Buddhism speaking, they had Van Jones, and then they had someone from the Repowering America, Al Gore's organization. And but this guy came back and he's saying, the force of nature, it's just a force. Force equals, if you know, F equals ma, mass times acceleration. Like, force equals velocity, mass times velocity squared. And he wrote it up on the board. This guy was just totally gone and lost. The sad thing is, your tax dollars paid for him. He's a professor of religions, telling us about the recent conference he went to. In the sciences, teachers are generally pretty good. But in the GE classes, a lot of them, you get that caliber of person teaching your kids on your dime twice through tax dollars and through tuition. My other personal story from, my non-acceptance in this world, I think was when I wrote a paper, again about communism. Why not? I don't get to talk about anything else I like to talk about at school. And the professor didn't accept it at all. Gave me a 0 on the final term paper, and I turned it back in again. I'm like, okay, you don't want to play this game with me, really. I've been writing letters back and forth with the parking ticket people for 2 years. You don't want to do this. He ended up giving me an A+ without any corrections or edits. I literally hit the paper, turned it back in, he gave me an A+. He's like, yeah, this is not worthwhile. Actually, speaking of city councils, the city council of El Cerrito, which is neighbors to Berkeley and, Berkeley and Richmond, so we got a little bit of everything for everyone there. The city council was attacking one of my most beloved organizations, the Boy Scouts. They were going after Camp Herms, which sits in Kensington Hills, amongst trees and other things, and they were banning them through wise land use planning, zoning laws, from entering a private partnership with T-Mobile to construct a cell phone tower so that T-Mobile could better provide for its customers in the valley. They banned it. They said just through zoning, but the whole debate is about cancer and cell phone waves. Spoiler, cell phone waves don't give you cancer. Just putting it out there. But it doesn't matter. They usurped their authority as a city council and went after the Boy Scouts for putting this cancer tower on their site. And they had speaker after speaker after speaker showing up, and I said, I can't abide by this. I had been reading about it in the paper. I said, I'm just going to show up at the next meeting. I'm going to show up. I'll have all of their favorite organizations, the EPA, Health, OSHA, every single government alphabet soup program who says they're wrong. Their favorite waste of taxpayer dollars. I'll have them speaking against them. They'll have to come to my position. And so I go there and I try to explain, okay, if you guys are concerned about ultraviolet light, good, that causes cancer. It's ionizing. On the other side of the visible light spectrum is radio and microwave radiation, which 3G, 4G, and all cell phone communication takes part in. The only thing you can get is slightly warm if you were sitting on the antenna 75 feet in the air. I mean, I couldn't make it more clear. Now, this seems like a very boring story, until you know who I debated against. Someone did come out of the woodwork to debate that. She said she was a doctor. She was a theological doctor. It's a THD from Berkeley. THDing, you can't make this up, in Christian ecofeminism. Ecofeminism, I had to look it up when I got home, is the belief that the earth is like a battered wife, and humanity is the male who is battering that wife. And they look at the world through that spectrum. It's not look at the world and see if that view fits. It's no. This is my theory. It's not a hypothesis. It's a theory, and the world is viewed like that. And she came up and she was just berating me, saying, you are being paid by T-Mobile. I wish I was. I wish T-Mobile paid me for all this work I did for them. I spent 4 hours gathering the documentation that no one read. So speaking of zoning laws and wise use planning, I think the crux of my talk will be on stupid laws. Because as you know, they're numerous, and I dwindled down to my favorite 10, subject to change without notice, because there are so many of them. I think starting off, we'll go way back to the wonder years of 1934. This is the basis. Know how you say, how did that become a law? That doesn't make any sense. They're forcing me to pay for something, a private service, all those things that you say, this is unconstitutional. Not after this case. It's not. It is called the rational basis test. Does anyone know of that? Oh, good, no lawyers. Okay, so check this out. It was a case called Neighbour versus New York. Now, this is one of those wonderful, you know the broken window fallacy in economics, where if you break a window, you are not creating economic value. Friedrich Bastiat, or Bastiat, if you pronounce it properly, wrote that paper. Neighbour versus New York was a case where Leo Neighbour, a grocery store owner, tired of milk riots. What? Milk riots. Why are there milk riots? Because the state of New York legislature decided to create one of those fantastic New Deal programs where they fixed the price of milk to create artificial shortages and therefore jack up the price, or keep the price a reasonable price. And so they set it at 9 cents per quart. Yes, this was created. Legislature actually debated this, and they passed it, and the governor signed it, and they imposed it upon their citizens. They set it at 9 cents a quart. He sold 2 quarts and a loaf of bread, which was valued at 5 cents, for 18 cents. For those of you doing the math, he undersold everything by 5 cents. Now, cutting off 2.5 cents per quart is illegal, and he was taken and fined and threatened with prison time. So it got to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said that this was not a violation of his rights. And they said that we are creating something called the rational basis test. And what that means, you're going to love this, it doesn't have to be rational, and it doesn't have to be the basis. It means if a politician thought that it might be a good idea, then it is constitutional. I'm not joking. There is strict scrutiny, and then there's rational basis scrutiny. You'll see it in a lot of opinions, especially by Justice Stevens, writing about, according to rational basis scrutiny, if a politician, it doesn't have to be a good idea, it doesn't have to accomplish what the original idea was set out to accomplish, it just, at the time of inception, has to have been a good idea. Case number 9, I actually wrote some notes because I mix these up in my head so regularly, and I want to keep them in the preserved order. Number 9 is going to be pretty terse about this. It's that Washington, D.C. doesn't allow unions to unionize public workers because they make our federal government too inefficient. One of the staunchest supporters of that was Nancy Pelosi, which is just, like, mind-boggling. Another one, we're going to go back to another Supreme Court case. This is number 8 on the list, and they just get worse and worse and worse. This one is called Tahoe Sierra Preservation Council, Incorporated. So these are actually the good guys, Tahoe Preservation Council Incorporated, versus the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. In 1981, Tahoe Basin and Tahoe Regional Planning Agency passed a temporary law, still in effect by the way, to basically halt all development in the Tahoe Basin. You want to notice the wonderful development up on the Nevada side and on the California side, everything's still kind of stuck where it was back in 1981. This is the reason. Well, the landowners are tired of not being able to increase the value of their property. They want to do something with it. They said this law is temporary, it should have been gone. This amounts to something called regulatory takings, where you take people's value and property away through regulation. This got all the way to the Supreme Court, as you know. And Justice Stevens, who presided over the majority opinion, unfortunately, ruled that it can't be qualified as regulatory takings because they still have their property. And they are therefore due no just compensation as stipulated in the Fifth Amendment. The value of their property is completely harmed, but according to the Supreme Court, this is totally legal and legitimate functions of government. Again, I'm not here to entertain and make you laugh all the time. Other one I think you would all really like is the solar installation subsidies. I don't know why I need to speak about this, but something is compelling me. Because one of my friends, who's a very conservative, right-wing guy, speaking of which, this same gentleman paid fiscal year 2009, $294,000 in income tax. He's a business owner, and know what he said to me? No, and the government says, well, we'll steer people's choices and we'll give them incentives not to smoke, whatever, by taxing the product. They never say we're going to steer and limit people's choices by taxing income. Although that's what it does, because know what he said to me? He said, I'm tired of working my butt off trying to earn $900,000 a year and support families because of people I hire as well. And so next year I'm going to earn $160,000, and I'm not going to pay a third of a billion dollars to our federal government and state government anymore. So this same guy, he's like, okay, I'll look into solar cells for my house. Maybe it'll save me some money. When you add solar panels to your house, there's a wonderful stipulation. We all know Prop 13, right? Now, solar panels, active solar panels, are exempt from that because Democrats want you to buy them. And so they said, okay, we'll make a law that says if you get $60,000 for the solar panels attached, it doesn't increase the property value. Okay, but passive solar systems, and this is the point, after they subsidize it to the tune of 30% from the federal government, another 20% comes from the state government, all, by the way, your money. I don't know if you know, you had a $3 billion fund that doesn't actually have any money in it, sort of like Social Security, Medicare. It just gets money as the fiscal year goes along to help subsidize people who buy these things. Passive solar systems are skylights. They trap warm air when the sun comes in and the air isn't allowed to escape. They vibrate, molecules speed up and they gain more energy and you're warmer. Those aren't, yes, if you put skylights in your house, that's considered a passive solar system. And that does get reassessed. But active solar system, like really expensive pieces of equipment, oh, by the way, it can't heat swimming pools or jacuzzi tubs because those are rich people items. Again, I just read the law this morning. It's unbelievably silly. Number 6. Oh, well, this one, California Coastal Commission. A lot of these are environmental just because of the region we live in and just because they are so pervasive. California Coastal Commission, my boss planted shrubs in front of his house, juniper shrubs, 20 years ago, got the permit. It was like $40 per plant to have it there because it's not considering an alternation of the ecosystem if you put a plant there. But let's just assume you water the plant and the plant grows to be healthy and tall and big. I thought people in the California Coastal Commission like green things, large trees sucking up all of that nasty carbon from the atmosphere. Well, once these juniper shrubs, still shrubs by the way, passed a diameter, a county inspector came out and measured the diameter of one of the bases of the plants to be over 4 inches, which qualifies it as a tree, which is a different permit, which he doesn't have. That he can pay $1,000 a year per plant, 20 in all, to keep those trees there. But at his own expense, he had to cut them down because they literally overgrew the size of their permit. Permits, by the way, is one of those wonderful progressive ideas that rights are just permissions. They're not rights, and any sort of violation of your rights is actually a remolding of your permissions. And that's very much so where this thing falls under.